It comes down to one final tournament. The end of the regular season draws near, and let's have it go out with an absolute bang as we prepare for the 2021 Countdown Cup Finals. Faces new and old clash in an epic tournament which has major playoff implications on the line. Seoul, Atlanta, Chengdu, LA. Who will step up to the occasion, and who is going to crumble under the pressure? Let's set the scene with a preview of this week and the usual predictions. Firstly, we have the Seoul Dynasty versus the Atlanta Reign. This one is very interesting, and I say that for a few reasons. One, Pelican will not, I believe, be traveling with Atlanta to Hawaii, and if you weren't already aware, he suffered from a collapsed lung last week, and it takes time to recover from something like that. In the meantime, you can't go on a plane. You just can't do it. It's far too dangerous. It's a major health concern. After doing some research, I discovered that doctors and other professionals recommend at least waiting 2 weeks before going on a plane if you suffer from a collapsed lung, ideally longer. I guess that Pelican could in theory play on high ping, but that's a disadvantage you do not want to be taking when someone like Profit and Fitz are the opposition. They'd likely be better off just utilizing Edison. I'm making the assumption overall that Pelican will not be playing, which means if you're the Reign, this is a tough challenge. Pelican was their main playmaker and arguably their best player. Aside from that, Seoul are a different beast in tournament scenarios as we saw time and time again in 2020. They could push anybody to their limits in this bracket. One other thing I'd like to bring up is the style of play. Both teams feel great comfort in using the Orisa comps. Recently, the Dynasty have been opting a bit more into the Wrecking Ball, but they've shown the Orisa look a lot as well. I would guarantee that both Atlanta and Seoul are more than willing to play that mirror match because they truly are that confident. Gesture and Gator are pristine Orisa players, not to mention that they love McCree, Tracer, and Bap among other things. In this particular meta mirror match, it's very close. They each kind of boast advantages over the other. For example, you likely favor Profit's Tracer over Edison's. In that sense, Seoul might get a major DPS advantage due to the absence of Pelican, but on the other side of things, you definitely have to favor the Iris Bap over Creatives. It's kind of the style differences that could play a factor the most in this though. Again, it's East versus West. They tend to have very different philosophies. Seoul like the Sombra, but Atlanta don't really play it. At the same time, the Reign prefer utilizing more Pharah, unlike the Dynasty, which is weird when considering that APAC have used her more overall. The thing that really stands out on the side of Atlanta though is the Reinhardt comp they enjoy using. Nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody in the East runs such a thing. It's a weirder strat. The Shock were like the only other team who utilized it, and I really don't know how to feel about the comp either. It worked wonders against the weaker teams, but its rate of success might not be so great against stronger foes, especially from the other side of the world. Remember the massive meta diff that we saw between the two regions in the Summer Showdown? That's the kind of feeling I get when I think about these range strats that are being used. I'm a little concerned that Atlanta might get run over if they over-rely on it. Whether it's Seoul, Chengdu, or both of them potentially, I suspect that somebody could end up punishing it. At the same time though, this could be something that throws APAC off guard when considering that nobody in their region has really practiced with it. Maybe running full-on counters to Ball, Tracer, and Sombra in these Death Ball types of comps could be the key. Either way, I'm hoping the Reign do not over-rely on it. You gotta play the stuff that offers you the best chance of victory. You can't afford to be messing around here. You still haven't clinched a top 3 spot in the West. Don't get overly risky. But even so, let's say they do make the right choices. Even then, there's still no guaranteed victory. Especially, again, because Pelican won't be there. Tournament Seoul is terrifying, and if there's no one there to keep Profit in check, Atlanta are not going to have a good time. If Pelican was playing, I would totally go Atlanta. But since he's not traveling to Hawaii, again, I'm assuming he's not playing, so that means to me, the Dynasty probably have the edge at DPS. Atlanta, in theory, do still have a chance though. My reasoning behind it is Atlanta are more experienced. They've already been here twice before. Sure, many of the Seoul players have also been to a bunch of tournaments in the past, but they haven't gone to any this year yet. Atlanta are less likely to suffer from nerves. They've gone to Hawaii twice already, and Seoul haven't had to play any morning games or go to any tournaments yet. But Seoul, though, I feel like they've just been in top form as of late, clutching out big win after big win along the way. And with no Pelican available, I fear the Reign will struggle to keep up, and they might even lose some morale. My verdict is a 3-1 Dynasty victory. The Reign's matchup with the Defiant showed off perfectly just how much they miss Pelican. He is everything to this squad. The Reign can still be competitive, but it's going to be difficult for them to be in top form without their MVP. Both sides need to win here. The bonus wins are needed desperately. Now let's talk Gladiators and Hunters. This is another interesting one. The Gladiators are riding a high. They finally broke the curse by making Hawaii after getting denied time after time. That confidence and happy factor could make them deadly. Teams who are just happy to be there in the moment are some of the scariest ones to face. Plus, the Glads have an opportunity to lock up a top 3 spot in the West with a good tournament run, so you already know they'll be going all out. Unlike their North American counterparts, I feel like the Gladiators consistently play more of the standard stuff that you see out of APAC. But honestly, that might not work to their advantage because Chengdu are pretty deadly themselves on both the ball and Orisa variants of the meta compositions. This one might end up coming down to things like the map selection and what composition we see more of. If the Hunters can have their way with Wrecking Ball, I definitely do favor them 9 times out of 10 no matter who they end up playing. The Gladiators may not be able to keep up in that regard, so there's not too much of a comfort factor going for them. Gaga's ball just gets more value than Muse's, and the Hunters have a stronger Sombra team as well. On top of that, the Glads have shown interest in playing Zarya, and if they choose to go that route, the Hunters will be more than willing to match them, and we all know how sick late young Zarya is, so that might not end too well if you're Space. On the bright side of things, I have at least some confidence that the Glads can stop the Pharah. They denied Nero pretty well, so I do have some hope. There's no guarantee though, and that's kind of what terrifies any Gladiators fan out there, I would say. The Hunters have been running over team after team with that Pharah comp no matter what counters are thrown at them. If the Gladiators are going to win this game, they gotta force the slower paced Orisa compositions and get Jinmu off of that Pharah. Slowing down the pace is key. That is going to be their best shot. Get the Hunters out of the Chaos Zone and beat them with a superior neutral game thanks to the firepower you boast at support. Leaf might be a nutcase on the Hanzo and McCree, but there's only so much he can do when matched up against Shu, Birdring, and Kevster. On paper, that is their best shot, but of course, theory crafting does not give you a lot of assurance, which is my big problem in this situation. Teams like the NYXL and even the Spark in theory had a better neutral game as well, but they both fell short. Now, of course, the Glads are definitely a better team than both of them, but my point still stands. If there's a will, there's a way. That's what I have learned about Chengdu the last couple of months. And that's why I ultimately decided to pick them in a 4-map series over the Glads. Sure, the Gladiators finally made Hawaii, but that doesn't mean they have completely moved past their old ways. Historically, they have been untrustworthy as a franchise in the big moments, and I kind of think Chengdu will have their way as a result. They'll force a lot of the ball stuff, then play way better than they should on the Orisa comps. It'll be all because of Leave, Tournament Monk and Yveltal, and a wildcard Sombra that the Glads may not be fully prepared for. And again, it's that experience factor that I talked about in the previous matchup. This is the Gladiators' first time in any sort of big tournament scenario this year. Meanwhile, Chengdu are basically pros at this point. They already experienced that learning curve in the main melee with that loss and just not being able to win any games, and then they made a tournament run last month on top of it, and I kind of find it hard to go against Chengdu in that situation when they clearly are very much in their element. If my garbage predictions were to hold true, that would leave us with Seoul versus Chengdu in winners finals and LA versus Atlanta in the lower bracket. Let's talk winners first. The next epic installment of Panda versus Tiger. Boy oh boy is this one exciting. This has been one of my favorite rivalries this year. They are so close to one another, and I would say their placing in the standings reflects that very well. Whoever finishes higher in this tournament gets the 2 seed, and the other has to play through the play-ins next month. This match is huge in terms of the playoff race. The lower placed team would have to go through a potential bout with Philly, that means. All it takes is one game, and suddenly, you're out. Which means this game could very well be a disaster where both sides kind of just crumble under the pressure, really. Despite playing under these circumstances, I have faith that both of these teams are going to play well and not make too many mistakes. What I am worried about, though, is how the Dynasty handled the ball compositions of Chengdu. That is the big win condition in my eyes. In the bunker head-to-head, Seoul are going to do fine. You'd probably favor them on paper, just like with the Gladiators. Fitz and Profit are deadly when it comes to the long-ranged poke. But how much will the Hunters willingly take that kind of mirror match? The Hunters don't willingly do anything, you know? They play by their own rules. Seoul have proven themselves on ball comps, though, which makes you feel a little bit better as a Seoul fan than I would say the Glads or Rain. Gesture has been killing it as of late, and if that trend continues, maybe he could give Gaga a run for his money. Not to mention that Seoul are one of the only other teams, I would say right now, who could confidently match Chengdu on Zarya. It's all about the Seoul tank line. If they have a big night on the stuff they aren't supposed to be as good at, the Hunters will be backed into a corner. I can't say for certain that Gesture will continue to play this good though. I'm not entirely sure if I have faith in him. Overall though, if Chengdu decide to play mostly Orisa, I think the Dynasty win. That seems pretty doubtful though, that's the only issue because again, it's the Hunters. Wrecking Ball is their signature style. And that is why I think the Dynasty are going to fall short. They have certain advantages they can exploit, but how frequently can they do it? How will Gesture play? Will the Dynasty be able to stop the Pharah? Can they handle Leave? There's too many question marks. The Hunters seem like a safer option. I like them a lot in this current format, so I believe they advance to the finals in 5 maps. Seoul's only hope outside of the Orisa comp is for counterpicks like McCree to be effective. Maybe they could shut down the Tracer and Sombra with it. That could be the X factor here. I personally don't think they'll find much success with it though, because Chengdu are going to find ways to play around it. They're a very, very smart group. They'll adjust their playstyle and play more ranged heroes like Pharah and Hanzo to get the dub. Let's talk about the other game. Who should we favor in Atlanta versus LA? Again, this is high stakes. The loser walks away with no bonus points whatsoever. The Gladiators have to win this and make the finals to clinch a top 3 spot. And on the other side of it, the Reign, they're in a slightly better position thanks to the tiebreaker, but they have to make sure they either get 1 bonus point by finishing top 3, or make sure that somehow, someway, the Gladiators do not make the finals. But, of course, if they lose this game here, they have no control over that. So ideally, they want to knock the Glads out right now. We've seen these two go at it in the Countdown Cup already before. It's about as even as you can get. It's all mental, really. The Glads can't seem to overcome the Reign at full strength these days. They always seem to come up short, and that might affect their play, just the nightmares of always losing to them in those big scenarios. Atlanta have already proven to be the stronger and more consistent team this year. Thankfully for the Gladiators, though, they likely don't have to play the Reign at full strength. Again, I value Pelican that much. If the Reign can barely beat the Gladiators with Pelican, it might be safe to assume they come out on the losing end without him. There's more room for Birdring and Kevster to assert their dominance, and if you combine that with a relatively close matchup both at tank and support, the Gladiators have a real chance to get some revenge here. It all kind of comes down to the nerves. Can the Gladiators stay composed? We gotta see a good game plan with proper execution. The fact that the Gladiators at least got that big win against the Shock the other week gives me a bit more confidence that they can stay composed under pressure. They know the Atlanta Reign very well, and they won't be feeling any lingering effects of playing an APAC team hours before. It's their first match of the day. I gotta go with the Gladiators in a 4-map effort. They simply have to capitalize with no Pelican. If a weaker Defiant team can push the Reign, the Glad should be defeating them. If they lose, it's a choke. No ifs, ands, or buts. Don't play with bad nerves like what we saw in the first half of the Shock game. They cannot keep depending on their playmakers to bail them out. Play a solid game and you have it in the bag. It's their game to lose. End of story. Okay, time to take a look at a hypothetical lower bracket finals game between the Dynasty and Gladiators. This is one I would kill to see. They are absurdly even roster-wise. They like to play similar compositions, and they're both tournament noobs in a sense. Seems like the making of a good game, am I right? Calling this one would be extremely difficult. The DPS are even. The Seoul tank line, I would argue, is a little stronger, but the Glad support line is definitely superior. There's a lot going on. There's no skill gap to be found. It's all about who shows the better teamwork. Usually I would lean towards Seoul in this regard just because the Gladiators always seem to mess up at the worst time, but right now I think the Gladiators might have the edge. It's something that Space talked about multiple times throughout the year that makes me think this way. It's the idea of the entire team wanting to go to Hawaii so bad so they can not only prove themselves, but also spend quality time together and bond, if you will. This is the goal they have been working towards since April. Something tells me they won't let this opportunity go to waste. As the weekend progresses, they will become stronger. With them already being relatively even with Seoul, I feel like this is going to give them the upper hand. Trust me though, this isn't the only thing that makes me feel this way. Something tells me these two are going to play a lot of Orisa comps. It's the composition we have seen more of lately. Teams are favoring that slower pace alongside the Hanzo and stronger overall point presence. The more slow-paced poke we see, the better it is for the Gladiators. Creative's BAP just doesn't compare in my opinion. It goes back to the neutral game I was referencing earlier. Flex supports play a big role in that too. Him plus Birdring and Kevster sounds like the better combo to me. I'm calling it now. Shu's going to have a great game, and that'll be the difference maker as the Gladiators go on to win the set 3-2. Something else to think about is the potential exhaustion factor. if my predictions were true, the Dynasty would have to play Chengdu and LA back-to-back. We're talking two really good teams from different regions that are bound to play at least a little different from one another, and that's on top of the fatigue and hard work they've put in throughout the qualifiers and knockouts to get here. Sure, a good match with Chengdu could help them get warmed up, but this seems like one of those situations where you're likely to run out of juice. Now, of course, this could also apply to the Gladiators. Don't think it's just the Dynasty. The Glads could be pretty exhausted as well. I mean, I really do think that the Dynasty are going to have a harder time just because they have to play Chengdu right before, and the Gladiators have a weakened Atlanta team, but you never know what could happen. Maybe the Gladiators have a longer series that tires them out more. Please bear in mind that this prediction is not one I am super confident in. It depends greatly on the decision making. If we see more Ana Trace or Dive, let's say, I probably favor the Dynasty. Creative can hold his own a lot better on the Ana and even Zen to a certain extent. On top of that, I favor Prophet's Tracer in the clutch more than I do Kevsters. There's also the possibility of 2U breaking out the Zarya in that scenario, which could mean trouble for the Gladiators. No matter the result, this is probably going to be one of the most entertaining affairs of the weekend that could very well go either way. I'm really excited about this one. And that would leave us with a theoretical finals of the Gladiators versus the Hunters. This game is literally all pride. They both accomplished their goals of getting the bonus points needed to make playoffs automatically. The result is meaningless and only serves as practice against the opposite region. Even with not so high stakes, I still kind of see them going all out for some reason, because after all, it would be the first tournament win in franchise history for either one of them. It's a great opportunity to feel good and do something nice for the fans. That's how I see it, at least. As for who I favor, it's the same deal as before. If the Hunters have their way with ball comps at least a little bit, I expect them to win. If it's pretty much double shield only, or the Gladiators find a way to counter Chengdu's go-to style, then the Glads probably have a good shot. My initial prediction still stands, however. I don't think there's any way the Gladiators can deny it. Wrecking Ball is so strong, and the Hunters have so many options. They're a top-tier Pharah, Hanzo, and Sombra team. I have confidence that Leave is going to be the best DPS in the lobby, and that Jinmu throws everybody else off. The Gladiators have to play a better team game if they hope to win. I don't think denying Leave or some other playmaker will be enough, because the rest of Chengdu will just eat them alive at that point. Denying the ball comp is their only hope. Force the Hunters out of their comfort zone. But honestly, I don't possess enough faith to pick the Glads in that situation. I don't think they have it in them. The Hunters win the Countdown Cup Finals 4-2. I'll be honest, I think it'll be a miracle just for the Gladiators to make the finals. No matter the team they boast every single year, they always find a way to disappoint the fans. Every single year we always say, oh, they could definitely beat teams X, Y, and Z, but they never actually do anything. This might be their strongest roster to date, but they still are the Los Angeles Gladiators. Their previous tournament results are rather, well, let's say bleak to put it nicely. I tend to think of them as a very cursed franchise, forever bound to disappointing results. This would be a great step in the right direction, even if they just did this. A second place finish in a tournament would be their highest ever. Baby steps are great. It's a confidence builder that you can take with you heading into the playoffs. Trusting a team with this kind of history to win a tournament is not something I plan to do. If the meta was a little different, I might be tempted to go Gladiators, but they are literally running into the Hunters at one of the worst possible times. The Pandas are not to be denied. With that prediction aside, the preview video comes to a close. Here's the full bracket for those who care. No Dallas or Shanghai means this tournament is as wide open as it gets. Anybody could realistically take it home, and I mean it. I definitely favor Chengdu, but their opposition is fierce. The two teams that finally got over the hump to make it here are kind of unknown, and they could be very dangerous. The regular season is surely to go out with a bang. That'll do it, ladies and gentlemen. If you enjoyed the prediction content, please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and leave a comment with some predictions of your own, because surely most of you have different opinions than I do on what the results of this tournament will be, so let me know what you're thinking down below. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate your support so much, and until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.